All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is our monthly new partner introduction. So this webinar is something we put together for those of you that are new to the Zycel family, whether your company is new to Zycel or whether you're an employee who's new to Zycel, or maybe you're an old employee who's been selling Zycel and you just like a little refresher on what we've got going on. So for today's webinar, we're going to be covering a lot of different topics, sort of giving you a top-down overview of all the key products that we sell here through the channel. As we go through, it's an odd pop-up message. As we go through today, if you have any questions, send them in with the question and answer interface in Zoom. So if you look in the Zoom interface, there's chat and there's hand raising. I want you to send it in using questions and answers. That's what I'm going to see as we go through today. And again, we're going through a lot of this quickly. So I may not do necessarily the best job explaining things. So again, feel free to send in a question if you have something more. Although for a lot of these topics, as we go through the month, we have more deep dives into a lot of this in different webinars that we're putting out every week. So we'll start with a little background on who Zycel is. So we've been making computer networking products for over 30 years now. We got our start back in 1989. Our US office is based out of Anaheim, California. So that's our sales, that's our warehouse, that's our marketing, and it's also our tech support. So when you call in, you are talking to a California-based tech support person. Some of you on the East Coast, we have early hour support, which is done through our German office. But we've got over 100 million devices that we've deployed. We currently serve 150 different global markets. And if you're here, it's because you've joined our channel partner program, or should be why you're here. So that gets you access to things like, pre-sale support, access to Marcus, our channel sales engineer, gets you access to deal registration, partner discounts, things like that. So when it comes to our channel products, we break them down into a couple different categories here: security appliances, wireless solutions, switching, sort of consumer gateway stuff, although we don't really sell a lot of that these days, and network management. So that's things like our Nebula Cloud platform, as well as things like SecuReporter and stuff. And we'll talk a little bit more about those as we go through. So I'm going to start by talking about Nebula. So Nebula is our cloud managed networking solution. And we just rolled out this week the ATP into Nebula. So now you can use both the Usg Flex and you can use the ATP series and manage them with Nebula should you choose to. Most of our higher end switches and pretty much all of our access points now all have the option of working with Nebula. So Nebula allows you to start setting up your devices without having to take them out of the box. At any point, you can go into your Nebula interface, create a new customer's account, create new sites under that customer, and start configuring things. Once the hardware has been shipped to you from distribution, you don't have to take it out of the box. You can simply scan the QR code that's on the outside of that box, assign it to your customer, and then ship the product out to the customer location for installation. Nothing needs to be configured on the device itself. As long as it's got power and an internet connection, it'll reach out to the cloud, find out where it's been assigned and what its configuration should be, and it'll automatically download its configuration. Setting everything up is really simple. Creating a Nebula account just takes a minute or two, and then creating a new site's really easy. Just create your new customer, define the site in there, and you're ready to go. So there's nothing else that you need if you want to use Nebula. Nebula is baked into the hardware itself. So there's no local area controllers you need. There's no software that needs to be running on a virtual machine, nothing like that. The hardware reaches directly out to the internet. So Nebula has been designed here to make it easy to access your networks that you are managing. Primary access is done through a web browser, but we also do have mobile apps designed to be used on mobile phones for providing basic overviews and basic configuration settings. But the bulk of it will be done basically through any sort of web browser, including on a tablet. So one of the nice features with Nebula is the ability to do guest networks really easy. So whether you're looking to provide, guest access at a retail establishment or in hospitality, or whether you're just providing guest access at an office for visitors. Super easy to do with Nebula. Nebula gives you a captive portal that you can use and a lot of flexibility with how you do things. So you can have users agree to a terms of service before they get access to the internet. You can require that they have a voucher that is given out by the front desk. You can have them log in with their Facebook credentials. You can have them create their own username and password before they get access to the network, et cetera. So a lot of flexibility built into Nebula. You can do it just with our access points. You don't have to be using a Zyxel gateway to do it. You can also do it with a Zyxel gateway and provide the ability to provide this captive portal through wired connections as well as wireless. So with Nebula, all updates are done over the air. So that's configuration changes, that's firmware updates. So there's no reason 90% of the time for you to need to go onto customer's premise. Everything can be done through the cloud. On the security side of things, we make VPNs really easy. If you're looking to do site-to-site VPN, it's really easy. You just choose the site you want to connect together. Tell Nebula what sort of topology you want those deployed as, and Nebula will take care of everything else. For those of you that are using remote employees and having them get back to the office, we have the ability to send out a script that automatically configures L2TP. So that works with iOS devices, it works with Macintosh, and it works with Windows. So you don't have to worry about needing to configure it yourself. You just send them an email with the script, and the script takes care of it for them. And then we've also got something new here called secure Wi-Fi, which basically allows you to take a Nebula managed access point and turn it into a VPN appliance that's managed through the cloud to make it really easy for remote workers to get back to the corporate network. So Nebula was designed from the ground up for multiple customer, multiple site management. So the interface has been optimized to make it super easy to keep an eye on a large number of customers with lots and lots of sites underneath those. So when you log into Nebula, you see this dashboard here. This dashboard gives you a quick snapshot of what's going on in that customer's network. You can see things here like how many devices have been assigned to that organization, how many of them are currently online versus offline, PoE utilization versus available PoE budget, how many wireless users you have, what sort of traffic those users are doing, which users are using the most traffic. So a lot of stuff is right there. And then you can quickly jump between customers or sites just using pull down menus here at the top of the screen. So Nebula itself is free. The core version of Nebula, we call it a Nebula base. That's absolutely free. There is no limit to the number of devices you can manage, no limit to the number of customers you can manage, no limit on the number of sites you can manage. Now we do have some paid upgrades. We have Nebula Plus and Nebula Pro. These are optional upgrades that unlock additional features for you. And we'll talk a little bit about those, I believe, in a future slide here. So now we want to talk about Nebula Flex. So when Nebula came out, we sort of did it the Cisco way, where Nebula was its own sort of sub-brand. And if you wanted to manage things in the cloud, you had to buy Nebula devices. So we had Nebula versions of devices and non-Nebula versions of devices. So these days, we've, for the most part, gotten rid of that now. We now have what we call Nebula Flex. So if you see a device that says Nebula Flex, it's telling you that it has the ability to be managed in the cloud. Or if you don't want to, you can manage it just like you would a traditional device. We also have Nebula Flex Pro. So Nebula Flex Pro includes 1 year of our Nebula Pro Pack, which is an optional license which unlocks additional features in the Nebula Cloud. So anything that says it's Nebula Flex Pro can be used standalone, can be used in the cloud. And if you are using it in the cloud, it does give you a bundled 1 year of the professional pack license. On the access point side of things, it unlocks another feature, which is the ability to be managed via a local area controller. So if you have a customer that you don't want to use the cloud for, you can still provide wireless LAN management with one of our dedicated local controllers. So we'll move on here and talk a little bit about security. So it's sort of probably our most confusing category of products. We've got a couple different series here, so we'll go through this, and I'll hopefully try to make it a little bit easier to understand what's going on. So we'll start with here when it comes to our security products. We've now been certified by the ICSA labs for 20 years when it comes to our firewall and VPN appliances. Now, when it comes to unified threat management, that is, gateway-based antivirus, anti-spam, content filtering, et cetera, rather than do that in-house and try to be, a jack of all trades, instead what we have done is we have partnered with leaders in the industry. So when you're using our UTM services, the signatures and the core behind what we're implementing has been provided by these guys here. So McAfee, WebRoot, LastLine, Trend Micro, Bitdefender, all companies that we've partnered with to help us implement those UTM services on our gateways. So now we'll start talking about some of the features here that are pretty consistent across all of our security lines. So the ability to do VPN high availability, basically have two different VPN connections. So if one fails or has issues, data can go out over the other. The ability to do WAN load balancing. A virtual tunnel interface so you can combine VPN tunnels together to increase your bandwidth. We have the ability to do SSL VPN. So it's a lightweight way of doing VPN access using just basic SSL encryption. We support L2TP over IPsec for mobile devices like phones and tablets. We offer antivirus as an optional UTM feature, content filtering where we do category-based content filtering. We have a layer 7 application intelligence here. So what that does is it allows you to create firewall rules based on individual applications. So instead of having to know, destination and source IP addresses and ports and things like that, we literally give you a list and say, hey, here's a list of applications that you might want to create policy rules for. Just choose the application. So it can give you flexibility for, the ability to block sometimes certain features of an application. It also means when we're generating reports, we can tell you not just, which user is generating traffic, but what sort of applications are eating up and using your bandwidth. Geo-IP enforcement, so you can, block traffic from places in the world that shouldn't be trying to access your networks. On the ATP side of things, we have a sandbox and machine learning. So that's a new way of doing antivirus, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a future slide here. All of our products have IDP, intrusion detection and prevention. We've got reputation filters. So on top of all of those services, most of our security appliances also have an integrated Wi-Fi controller. So again, if you don't want to manage your APs directly, if you don't want to put them in the cloud, you can always manage them with one of our USG products here. So instead of having a multi-box solution, it's just integrated into our security gateways. And most of our security gateways also have the ability to unlock what we're calling here Hotspot Management. Specifically, it's a feature set that's really designed for a hospitality type guest network access. So that's something else that can be unlocked as an optional feature for you. And some of the other stuff here, I think we've already talked about most of these. Let me skip that. So another feature that we have here, apologies for my voice, rained last night, so my allergies have been going nuts. We have the ability to create a virtual private cloud. So we have worked with Microsoft and Amazon to be able to basically host your applications in AWS or in the Microsoft cloud and allow your users to access those cloud-hosted applications as if they were hosted there on-premise. So this is a certified VPN connection between the local office and the cloud. So that is something here that most of our products do support. All right, so now let's break up our products. So these days we've separated out our products into 3 different categories. We're calling them simplicity, flexibility, and ultimate. So simplicity is our VPN series. Flexibility is the USG Flex series, and ultimate is the ATP series. So we've got a little thing here trying to show you, comparisons between the different models, what you're going to get. As you can see on the VPN series, performance is optimized for basic firewall and VPN functionality. So that's where you're going to get the most performance. We do offer content filtering, but we don't offer any other UTM type services. So if you're looking to provide gateway-based antivirus, things like that, you'll want to step up to one of the other two products. So that brings us to the Usg Flex. So the Usg Flex has VPN, has of course our firewall, but this is really optimized for UTM performance. If you're familiar with our previous USG series, these can provide performance up to 5 times faster when it comes to UTM and firewall features here. And then on the high end of things here, we have the ATP series, just recently integrated into Nebula. So this unlocks for you sandboxing, IP reputation filters, DNS reputation filters. So now we'll go through some of the different models. In general, when we're talking about a series of products, the primary differences between going from one model to another in this series are simply the configuration of the ports. How many WAN ports does it have? How many LAN ports does it have? And just how much horsepower it has. How powerful is the processor in the device? But otherwise, for the most part, the feature set is going to be identical. So it's just performance and number of ports. So you can see here on the VPN series, it offers content filtering, device high availability, the wireless LAN controller we've talked about. And this is also the only product that at the moment that offers SD-WAN. So if you're looking to provide an SD-WAN solution, you would buy a VPN gateway and then apply the SD-WAN license to convert it into an SD-WAN device. On the Usg Flex series, again, very similar here. Primary differences are going to be the ability to provide full UTM services. And the ability to manage this in the cloud should you choose to do so with Nebula. And then as we talked about before, the ATP, basically the same set of features, but it's getting you a different type of UTM. It's giving you that sandboxing capability, which allows us to find and identify zero-day exploits much quicker. It creates a cloud-based solution for sharing information. So all the ATPs out there are always as up to date as humanly possible, and also put some other extra features in there like the GeoIP and reputation based stuff. So let's talk briefly about SD-WAN because not everybody's too familiar with it. So SD-WAN basically takes advantage of the fact that you're creating a connection between 2 or more sites where you control the WAN port on both ends. So it allows you to tweak basically the way TCP/IP VPNs work, and allows us to optimize and coordinate things between those points to create much higher and better performance. So primarily this has been historically used as a replacement for MPLS. So those that aren't familiar with it, MPLS is something that a lot of businesses that have multiple locations would do. So they would pay their, whoever the local service provider or telco is for this dedicated connection between multiple sites to run data over. Now these connections are generally not particularly fast, but they were very reliable, low latency, versus say a typical VPN connection, which goes out over the internet and is subject to a lot of different performance issues because it's going over a public network versus a private MPLS network. So SD-WAN basically allows you to use VPNs as a replacement for expensive MPLS devices. So for instance, you can provide VoIP between locations where you've got your VoIP server just at one location because the performance is good enough now over the VPN that you aren't going to have latency issues and drop packet issues that you would have over a standard VPN connection. So again, this is all taking advantage of the fact that basically we own all you own all the hops between this. So you're able to basically modify things from how they would traditionally work. So you can see here we can optimize TCP acceleration, optimize latency mitigation, packet loss mitigation, all sorts of things here to make things faster and more reliable than they would traditionally be. So this is a real world example. This was a connection between our Taiwan office and our German office. You can see here, it was about a 290 millisecond round trip ping time between these locations. Very low loss, 0.3% packet loss, very low jitter, 3 millisecond jitter. Over a traditional VPN connection, it took almost 3 hours to transfer an Ubuntu ISO. Same connection, but using SD-WAN optimization, it took 10 minutes to transfer the same file. So it makes a huge difference as far as VPN performance goes. So we'll talk a little bit here about the Usg Flex series in a little bit more detail. We already saw this slide earlier. Oops, I apologize. My slides are a little messed up here. We're jumping from there, I guess, to ATP. So I apologize for that. I need to fix my slides. So let's talk a little bit about ATP. So the ATP, one of the key differences with the ATP is the ability to do this sandboxing type antivirus, anti-attack malware software. So basically one of the problems you run into with a traditional UTM appliance, including our Usg Flex series, is basically there's a gap in time between when a new type of traffic or a new threat hits the internet and when an antivirus company has identified it, created signatures, and distributed the signatures. So those are traditionally called zero-day exploits, something that's new that there is no fix for yet. So ATP kind of solves that for us. So basically what happens here is we use what we're calling in this case smart cloud intelligence, artificial intelligence, we call it a lot of different things, sandboxing. Is basically, with the traditional system here, we get some packets that we don't know where it is. The ATP is able to essentially stop those packets from going through, capture whatever it is that's being sent on this new type of behavior, and upload it to the cloud where it gets put into a ridiculous number of virtual machines that emulate emulate an actual network where we know how the network's supposed to behave. So we can see, is this new type of traffic something that's malicious or not? So if it is malicious, we can determine that, hey, wait a minute, this is something malicious that's going on. And we can go ahead and basically in real time push out signature updates to all the other ATP devices so that they can now recognize this new threat much quicker than we would using the traditional UTM way of doing things. So the way this works is it's essentially real-time cloud and device intelligence. So anytime any new ATP sees something it doesn't recognize, up it goes to the cloud. Once our cloud has figured out what it is, good or bad, we'll be able to then notify all the other ATP devices and say, hey, this is good, let those traffic through, or wait a minute, no, this is bad, block it, it's something malicious. So this is showing here, our ATP is powered by Lastline, one of the industry leaders when it comes to this type of protection. And then one other security thing we have here for you is SecuReporter. So it is a monitoring and reporting platform for our security appliances. So basically it takes what's going on all of your networks and gives you a centralized location you can go to generate reports, whether you're just checking in to make sure everything's running smoothly, or you can set this up to send out alerts and let your customers know, hey, those UTM services you're paying for, they've blocked this many malware attacks, they've blocked this many antivirus things, they've been able to recognize and block these sites your employees were trying to go to. So basically, it's just taking the information from our USG, the log data, the application data, our security data, uploading it to the cloud, performing analytics on it, and generating easy to use and easy to access reports. So it's letting you know the who, what, and when of all sorts of attacks. So again, it's a great tool to use for your customers. If you have customers using UTM services, to be able to let them know what's going on, and so they can see that protection. So when it comes time to renew those UTM licenses, you've established for them that you are getting a benefit from them. And again, it's designed much like Nebula, so all of your customers are in one location to make it easy for you to get access to them. You're not having to log into each individual customer's USG to be able to get reports from it. Reports are customizable, and they can be set up to automatically be emailed out either to your employees or to your customers. And if you're sending it to your customers, you can add your logo into the reports, so they know that it's you that's configured this, it's you that's helping protect them. So now we'll move on from security, and we'll start going through our switch products. So we've got lots and lots and lots of different switches. So I'm going to talk about the naming. So when you're skimming through the price sheet or through our website, if you understand our naming, it really goes a long way to understanding what the product is offering. Or so if you know what you're looking for, but you don't know the model name, it'll help you quickly get to whatever model it is that you need. So we'll start here. All of our switches will start with a 2 or 3 letter prefix. ES means it's a fast Ethernet switch. We don't really sell those here in North America anymore. GS tells you that all the ports are 1 gig ports. XS tells you that all of the ports are 10 gig ports. And then we have our XGS, which is telling you that most ports are 1 gig, but there are 10 gig uplinks. So just real quickly there, if you know you just need gigabit, you know you're looking at a GS series switch. If you know you need 10 gig uplinks, you know you need to look for an XGS branded switch. We also have MGS, which is our metro switches. We don't really offer those here in North America, but it is something you may run across on our global site. And then we'll have a suffix on the end of our switches. So if the switch name ends in P or HP, it's telling you it provides PoE. Most of our switches these days are HP, which tells you that we can either provide 30 watts per port or 60 watts per port. And then if it ends in F, it's telling you that all of the ports on the switch are fiber ports. So if you're looking for a fiber switch, you're looking for a switch that ends in F. Now we have something in our switches that sometimes causes some confusion, which is called combo ports. Basically, generally we will have a series of ports for the uplink ports that are give you the ability to use either fiber or use copper. So people will see that and they'll go, oh, I've got 1 copper, I've got 1 fiber, when actually it's a combo port. So you've only got 1 port there, but it's got 2 physical interfaces, and you could choose to use one or the other. So in this particular case here, you can see there's these 4 ports here, 2 copper, 2 fiber. So this isn't 4 actual switch ports, this is 2 switch ports, each one of them sharing a copper and a fiber, allowing you to choose which of those 2 to use for it. And then when you're looking at our SFPs, something that is called an SFP is a 1 gig fiber adapter. SFP plus means it's a 10 gig or faster copper adapter. So that lets you know when you're looking at the price list, hey, this switch has got 1 gig uplink, so you know you need SFP. If your switch has 10 gig uplinks, you know you need to be looking at one of our SFP plus modules. And some of our higher end switches do provide dedicated stacking. So we sell a special cable called a direct attach cable or DAC cable. So that is something you can buy from us that allows you to do a dedicated true switch stacking. Most of our switches will allow what we call virtual stacking, but for those of you needing to do an actual real physical stack, you will need these DAC cables. So let's talk briefly here about PoE. So when it comes to PoE, there are 3 classes of products now. There is 802.3 AF, which is the older standard. It can provide up to 15.4 watts of power per port. Most of our switches are what we call PoE plus, which can provide 30 watts of power per port. So that's called 802.3 AT. And now we've also got 802.3 BT, which provides up to 60 watts of power per port. So generally you only see demand for this on higher end Wi-Fi 6 access points and on some of the higher end pan tilt zoom cameras that are out there. To try to simplify things, we've grouped our switch families into different categories here, similar to what we did on the security appliances. We have effortless, simplicity, flexibility, and ultimate. So those products that fall under the flexibility banner or the ultimate banner, these can be managed with Nebula. So that is our 1350 series, 1920 V2s, 1930s, 2220s, and the 3800s. So we'll start going through some of these switches really briefly here for you. On the lower end side of things here, if you're looking for just some very basic web management, we have our 1200 series here. So we've got both a 5 and an 8 port version with and without PoE. We've also got our XGS 1210 and XGS 1250. These have 10 gig uplinks on them. These also have some multi-gig ports on them. Going up there is our 1900 series. So our 1900 series is our sort of true entry level business class switch. They're web managed. They have some more features that you can control than the 1200 series does. Most of these are rack mountable. So we've got on the lower end side of things, we've got 8 port and 10 port switches with and without PoE, 24 port switches with standard PoE, and with a sort of lower budget PoE. So for those of you that are looking for a smaller budget switch, the EP series would provide that for you. Going up from there takes you to our 1920 series. So this is probably our best selling family of switches. So these are, a full featured layer 2 switch that are all fully web managed. These can also be managed in the Nebula Cloud. And so all of these GS will have 1 gig fiber uplinks on them. And then the step up from there is our XGS 1930, very similar to the 1920 series, but this gets you 10 gig uplink ports. So if you're looking for 10 gig uplink ports, XGS 1930 series. And then we also have the XS 1930. So these are ones where all of the ports are 10 gig ports, or at least multi-gig. And then we've got our GS 2220 series. So this is for those of you guys out there that like command line interfaces. It does have web management, but it also is our first series of switches that have a command line interface. So if you like managing your switches or creating scripts using command lines, this is the series for you, the GS 2220s. So this right here is our XGS 2210s. These will eventually be replaced with XGS 2220s here at some point. So at the moment, these cannot be managed with Nebula. The XGS 2220s can, but this is very similar to the 2220, only with 10 gig uplinks on it. And then on the higher end of things here, here's our XGS 3700. So this is our layer 3 light switch family. For those of you looking for some basic layer 3 features. The XS 3800, same thing, layer 3 light, but this one has 10 gig uplinks. And then a full layer 3 managed switch here is our 4600 series. So one thing we do a little bit differently on our PoE that not all of our competition has is intelligent PoE management. Basically, the way that the standards are based, devices classify themselves as class 1, 2, 3, or 4, and that determines how much power budget the switch reserves for them. Unfortunately, there are some huge jumps between those different classes. So class 3 is, I think, 15 watts, and then you go to class 4, it's 30 watts. So, I mean, you're basically doubling the amount of power a switch needs to reserve if you follow the standard, when oftentimes it's not needed. So we have the ability, and you can turn this off if you don't want it, where we basically monitor each PoE device, see what its peak power draw is, and then only reserve that amount of power for each device, freeing up the additional parts of your budget to power more devices. So it lets you power more devices with the same PoE budget. So in this example here, we've got a IP phone. It uses 9 watts of power. Now, by standard, the switch is supposed to reserve 15.4 watts of power, right? So over 6 watts of power difference, that's basically never going to be used. So by using our intelligent monitoring here, you can put a lot more devices on there. So this is showing here, same sort of scenario, but in this case, we're talking about a class 4 device. So it reserves 30 watts of power on the switch, but it's only actually using 16 watts. So you've got 14 watts of power that's being reserved for each device that isn't needed. So you can see here, if we were trying to do 20 phones, it would require 600 watts of power on the switch if we followed the standard way of doing things. But if you put it into consumption mode here, you're only using 320 watts of power to power those same 20 IP cameras. We also have an interesting series here, the 1350 series. They're very interesting in that they were custom designed specifically for one interesting application, which is providing IP camera installations. So these switches have a sort of a different set of features. They do have a web interface. They can be managed with Nebula. They also have a command line interface. So let's go through some of the interesting features here. So extended range. Traditionally, data and power can only be sent 100 meters over Ethernet. With the 1350 series switches, you can send it 250 meters. We do lower the speed, so speed is only 10 megabits per second. But it works with any type of end device. There's nothing extra you need to buy to plug into them. So if you need to run Ethernet more than 100 meters, these can do it up to 250 on one run without having to put any sort of repeaters or power boosters in there. These switches provide continuous PoE. If the switch needs to reboot for any reason, it continues to provide power to the connected device, so it doesn't reboot the connected device. We've also got the ability to go in and see which devices are currently connected, see what their health is, see what their IP address is. Doesn't have to be cameras. We also have an automatic camera recovery mode, and again, doesn't actually have to be used just on cameras. It will work with APs and other PoE devices. So basically, you can use either ping or LLDP to monitor the device. You define, how often does it pull this device? And if it fails, how many failures before you power cycle the device? So it'll automatically then power cycle the device. And it knows, and you define here how long it waits before it resumes again to give that device time to boot back up. So it's really handy for making sure connected devices are always online and responding. So now we'll talk a little bit about accessories for the switches. So we sell SFP and SFP Plus modules. We also sell our direct attached cable. So these are available for you through Zyxel. So now we'll move from switches into wireless. So we're going to split our wireless access points into two categories, flexibility and ultimate. So flexibility is any APs that start with the number 1 or 2, such as NWA 1123, NWA 210AX, etc. The ultimate side of things are our 5 and 6 series. So WAC 500D, NWA 5123 ACHD, etc. So with our APs, all of our APs can be managed directly through a web GUI. All of our APs, with the exception of a couple older models that are still floating around, everything that's current currently works with Nebula, so you have the access to the free cloud management. And then the Ultimate series are those that give you access to controller-based management, so using a USG as a local area controller. So one of the key things here is the philosophy that goes into designing our access points. If you've ever met us at a trade show, you may have run into this, where we will have our AP on the table. We will also have a Ubiquity. We will also have a Ruckus. And we'll have you pick them up, and you will find that our access points weigh a lot more. And then we'll open them up and can show you why they weigh more. And it's because of the way we design things. So access points are a solid state technology. There's no moving parts. So one of the leading causes of failure over time is something called heat fatigue. Heat builds up. It can cause solder joints to fail. It can cause the little teeny tiny switches inside the chips to fail and be locked open or closed, etc. So all of our APs are going to have this metal sheet behind the PCBA. It's essentially a heat sink that's designed to pull heat off the components on the board and vent them out the back of our access points. The next thing you will notice is we have a lot more shielding on our PCBA versus most of our competition. In addition to just board level EMI, we're also providing shielding to neighboring 4G and 5G frequencies, which may cause interference on your 2.4 or 5 gigahertz radios. So we've added extra shielding to help keep that out. And then the next thing you will notice is there is generally going to be another plate of metal above the PCBA, and then we will have another board with our antennas mounted to that board. Most of our competition, including a lot of our more expensive competition, is mounting their antennas directly onto the PCBA. So by separating them from the PCBA, you get a better signal to noise ratio, and this metal shield sort of acts as a reflector to sort of boost the signal that the antennas are picking up. So this applies to all of our access points, which come with a lifetime warranty, which at this point is all of them, from the cheap little NWA 1123 ACV3 all the way up to our WAX 650S. They all follow this design philosophy. Another thing that we do differently here is we only use solid state capacitors. There are no electrolytic capacitors. So that removes one more common cause of failure on a solid state device like this. We've also got some different technology that you may not have run into if you haven't been using our products. We have what's called dual optimized antennas. Now, most of your access points are designed with one set of fixed antennas. It's designed to be mounted on a ceiling, pointed down, covering an area that's roughly a circle emanating out from the access point, which is great, except for in the real world, you can't always mount your APs on the ceiling. Sometimes you have to mount them on the wall. So when you do that, the signal coming out of that AP is suboptimal for the mounting location. So our solution to that is these dual optimized antennas. Those APs with dual optimized antennas, mostly our 5 and 6 series, have two sets of antennas, one for ceiling mount, one for wall, and then you have the ability to choose which one it uses. So you can, those that are mounted on the ceiling, you can use your ceiling antenna pattern. Those mounted on a wall, we've got a special wall antenna pattern that we can use. And then the other technology we have here is smart antenna technology. So this is primarily something that only Zyxel and Ruckus offer. Cisco doesn't offer it, HP doesn't offer it, Genius doesn't offer it. So one quick thing here, smart antenna is not beamforming. Sometimes people get those confused and think they're the same thing. They are not. So smart antenna is designed basically to improve the quality of experience for users. It does this by optimizing the antennas for where users are. And in our algorithm, we also optimize for where other sources of interference may be. So when we're dealing with 2.4 and 5 gigahertz spectrum, challenges are the spectrum itself is pretty small, and most of the newer devices, to get the faster speeds they're advertising, require you to use large chunks of that spectrum. And when we're dealing with Wi-Fi, only one device can transmit at a time. If you have multiple devices transmitting on the same radio frequency at the same time, it causes interference and packets to be dropped. So unlike a traditional antenna where you've got this fixed antenna pattern, smart antenna has hundreds of antenna patterns that it can use. So it's got the ability to go through in sort of real time here and choose an antenna pattern that's optimized to maximize the signal to shoot it in the direction of the client device, but also to sort of ignore other sources of RF interference that may cause noise and signal to noise ratio issues. And this works with any client device. It doesn't require anything special on the client device. It also works for moving devices. The device does not have to be static. So here's a comparison. We're comparing our Wi-Fi 6 product to Aruba's Wi-Fi 6. Both are 4x4 11AX products. Ours has smart antenna, theirs doesn't. And as you can see, our performance is in green, HP's is in blue. Significant performance differences between the two, especially at these distant ranges here. So a while back, a third-party group, the University of Brescia, their networking group, decided to test claims made by us and Ruckus about smart antenna. So they bought our product, they bought Ruckus's product, they bought Cisco, and they bought HP and compared them all. And what they found is in real-world networking conditions, you can get up to a 70% better performance with smart antenna versus non-smart antenna products. And again, in an environment which is sort of more real world where there is co-channel interference, we beat Ruckus by 45%. So I'm going to go back here. We've got a link on the bottom of the page that'll take you to the University of Brescia group. You can find full details of all the testing they've done. Also, you can just search Zycel co-channel interference or Zycel smart antenna, and we've put together a white paper that you can share with your customers that just focuses on the key benefits of smart antenna and explaining how it works. So we'll talk briefly here about Wi-Fi 6. So Wi-Fi 6 is the first new wireless standard since 11N that works in both the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz radio. So, 11AC was only 11AC on the 5 gigahertz radio. The 2.4 radio remained 11N. Now with Wi-Fi 6, you can have Wi-Fi 6 on both radios. In theory, you can get up to a 10 gig data rate. So that includes all the protocol overhead though. So realistically, throughput's going to be probably somewhere around 5 to 6 gigabits per second. But still, it's quite impressive for wireless technology. It's operating on 5 gigahertz. And it adds a lot of new technologies that have been designed basically to solve a lot of the issues that Wi-Fi has had basically since day one. So it gives you the ability to more efficiently use the wireless spectrum, both by providing both downstream MU-MIMO, but also now providing upstream MU-MIMO, something that AC didn't offer. Upgrading the wireless technology from OFDM to OFDMA in both directions, up and down, allowing much more efficient sharing of the spectrum and being able to assign exactly how much spectrum is actually needed per device. Resource unit scheduling for more efficient use of broadcasting, reducing interference issues when multiple devices would try to transmit at the same time under the older standards. BSS coloring, basically being able to provide extra data on the frames to let devices know if they should be paying attention to that burst of packets or not. And targeted wake up time, allowing devices to more efficiently go to sleep and know when to wake back up for better energy efficiency. So lots of cool stuff in Wi-Fi 6. And now we'll briefly talk here on the Ultimate series. As I mentioned before, everything can be managed in the cloud, but we do also have on-premise controller for those that don't want to put their devices in the cloud. And it provides all the features you would expect from a local area controller, intelligent dynamic channel selection, zero AP configuration. So much like Nebula, where Nebula will automatically reach out to the cloud. If you have a local area controller, a Zycel AP will automatically find that controller and connect to it. You don't have to go in and configure the AP and point it to the controller. It does it all automatically. Mesh, fast roaming. So very similar series of features compared to our cloud solution. The one thing that a cloud doesn't offer that local area controller does is rogue AP detection. This is just showing here the different models of our gateway products, the VPNs, the Usg Flex, the ATPs. You can see here each of these models what the default number of APs that can be managed with the built-in controller. And then over here is the maximum number of APs. So you could, if you want to manage, more than 8 on the VPN 100, you can buy licenses to unlock up to 72 APs to be managed by that VPN 100. I know we went through a lot of this stuff, guys, but that is it for today's webinar. Feel free to send in questions using the question and answer interface. And while I wait to see if anyone has any questions, we put on these webinars. We go more in depth into a lot of things. So if you want to learn more about Nebula, we've got Nebula presentations. If you want to learn more about the ATP, we've got ATP presentations. But if you don't want to wait for our next webinar to cover those topics, all of our past webinars, or most of them, are available on our YouTube page. So on YouTube, we are known as Zycel America Channel. I know it's a mouthful, it's 3 words. So Zycel America Channel, but all of our past webinars are there. So you can go through that and get caught up on some of those topics that you may want to go a little bit more in depth without needing to wait, and take an hour out of your day at our schedule. You can just watch it whenever you've got the free time. And then also we are on LinkedIn there, Zycel US channel. And then just while I'm waiting here for any questions to come in, we do have user forums, forum.zycel.com. It's a really handy forum, not only so you can talk and get help from your fellow Zycel installers, but it's also where all of our announcements go first. So if you want to hear about the latest security, bulletins, you will find them on that forum first. If you want the latest release notes for whatever new firmware has come out, you will find them on that forum. In addition, our R&D and our CSO teams do monitor those forums. So you may pop a question and you may actually get an answer from a Zycel employee. Even if they don't respond, they are monitoring those to get ideas for feature enhancements, to help determine what bugs may need priority to be solved first. So try to use that forum, take a look at it, play around with it. It's something that is very helpful. So Paul is asking a question here. He's asking, are there any other Zycel channels for other areas? Would they be worth listening to? Yeah, so we're in North America. So, Zycel is a global company. We've got lots and lots of different Zycels. So Zycel America channel covers basically all of the channel products here that are available in North America. I'm sure European channel, various Asian channels are also putting on their own webinars. So there may be some good information there. Just keep in mind though, if you are, watching, say, European presentation, they may have different products. For instance, I know on the AP side of things, it's largely the same model numbers, but all of their APs perform worse than the North American ones because there are stricter rules on the power output of the APs. So oftentimes the US version has got double or more power versus the European version of the product due to those different rules on RF power output. So just keep in mind that, some of the points they make may not apply to North America, and they may be referencing products that aren't available in North America for various reasons. So for instance, Europe sells a lot of mobile hotspots. And we do not here in North America, simply because in Europe, basically everything can be used on anybody's network, where in the US, you have to get carrier specific certification. Sometimes they won't activate third-party products that aren't on their list, other things like that. So there are going to be some of those differences. But yeah, you're absolutely welcome to go to YouTube and look at some of the other Zycel channels. But if you're looking for stuff from North America, Zycel America channel. Our service provider side of things, if you're doing CPE, there is a service provider channel that just covers the service provider products, although those are mostly focused at medium and larger ISPs, people providing, DSL access to their customers, people providing fiber access to residential customers, things like that. So I don't see any other questions. So I am going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thanks for joining us, guys. If you have any questions or any comments, you can email me, or you can just reach out to your salesperson, Jacob, David, Andy, and they can always make sure me or Troy sees any sort of questions or comments you guys have. Thanks, everybody.